The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Brian Munson with NCBA CLUSA. We're just going to wait about one more minute for a few other participants to roll in, and then we will get started with our webinar. Great. So again, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, How to Use Technology as a Strategic Driver. Again, my name is Brian Munson. I am the Business Development and Sales Manager for NCBA CLUSA, and I will be today's moderator. Your webinar today is co-hosted by NCBA and LBMX. Before we begin, just a quick bit of housekeeping for you. All participant phone lines will be muted during this presentation to reduce any background noise. There will be a chance to pose a question. To do so, just go to the control panel on your GoToWebinar screen and you can type in your questions there. Upon the conclusion of the actual presentation, the questions will be collected and answered as time allows. Also, NCBA CLUSA is recording this program, so we'll have it archived for you. You will receive an email containing a link to the posted recording, likely early next week. So if you want to be able to listen to again, share it with friends, colleagues, etc., you are more than welcome to do that. So again, our webinar today is co-hosted by LBMX, and your presenter is Steve Segan, Director of Products. Steve has been designing software products for buying groups and their members for over 15 years. As Director of Products at LBMX, he oversees product design and management, ensuring that LBMX products and services support the long-term prosperity of buying groups, their members, cooperatives, and their EDI trading partners. Prior to LBMX, Steve served as the Senior Product Manager for Activant Solutions in Canada, where he oversaw design and rollout of their next-generation POS platform, which is one of Canada's largest purchasing co-ops. He was IT and Logistics Manager for DigiPOS, providing POS software and hardware to independent retailers through North America and the UK. So his software career is well documented and spans a lot of different areas. For a quick bit of background on LBMX, they support independent business owners and cooperatives to help create sustained economic growth. Since their founding in 2000, their steadfast belief has fueled business, and they're in a mission to equip their partners and clients with the same big technology advantages that corporate competitors have. They have been a supporter of our National Cooperatives Conference, Purchasing Co-op Conference, for many, many years. We are happy to call them partners and to work with them very closely. They have offices in London, Canada, and serve the US, New Zealand, and Australia as well. So with that little bit of background, I'd like to turn the webinar over to Steve, and we can get started. Steve?
All right, thank you very much, Brian, and welcome everyone. Good afternoon. What I'm going to talk about today is how do you come up with the right technology strategy for your purchasing cooperative? And then what do I actually mean when I say technology strategy? If I were to ask you to list the software that your co-op is using today, you would most likely list the very basic things like accounting software, your accounting package, Microsoft Outlook, Office, Excel, Word, your website, which probably has a secure area for your members, payroll software, etc. And if you were to look through that list of software, you'd notice that all of these are operational tools. Sure, they're indispensable for getting your day-to-day work done, but what strategic value do they offer your group? I mean, do they increase the rebate checks your members receive? Do they reduce the cost of goods for your members? Do they help you recruit new members? The technology you use should really act as a strategic driver for your co-op and not just be simply an operational tool. So I'm going to walk you through how you can come up with a tech strategy and how you can make sure it's focused on the core needs of your buying group or purchasing co-op. So the very first step when you think about creating your technology strategy is you have to be crystal clear about what's truly important for your purchasing co-op. What are your co-op's core objectives? What value do you bring to your membership? Because unless your technology strategy aligns with your co-op's priorities, it's going to be a waste of time, money, and resources. So for the sake of this discussion, I'm going to focus on a very traditional purchasing cooperative model. Traditional purchasing co-op focuses on leveraging the buying power of their members. So the overall goal is to reduce the cost of goods through discounts and rebates in order to significantly improve your members' bottom lines. You may have other secondary goals, but if this main goal is not consistently achieved, membership in your co-op has little value. So when I look at the purchasing cooperatives I work with, the biggest mistake that I tend to see is investing time, money, and resources on technology projects that do not directly address this primary goal of the co-op. I see upgrades to accounting systems, improvements to web portals, even adopting online ordering tools. These all have operational value, but none of them help you meet your core objective of significantly improving your membership's bottom line. So for the next 30 minutes or so, I'm just going to walk you through an example of how you can use technology not as an operational tool, but as a strategic driver that drives your co-op forward. So to do that, I'm going to walk through an example using a purchasing cooperative that I started working with 6 years ago. So when this group approached LBMX, quite frankly, they were struggling. They were losing members. They weren't sure how much their remaining members were buying outside of the co-op. They had negotiated very good rebate programs, but they were never quite sure if the reporting they received from their suppliers was accurate. They also had some very good plateau rebates and incentive targets set up, but more often than not, they were missing these plateaus. And if they had only known earlier that they were going to miss their plateau and by how much, then they could have had their members place additional orders. They found themselves unable to launch new initiatives because they didn't have enough money in their budget. Their staff was overwhelmed dealing with invoices for existing members. So even if they managed to add new members, they really couldn't handle the additional throughput. And so in brief, they really had no ready answer when a departing member asked them, well, why should I stay? So what we did at LBMX is we provided them with a set of technology tools that focused directly on that primary objective of helping them improve their members' bottom line. So here's what we did. Within our technology strategy, the highest priority is given to getting accurate and complete real-time data about what the members of a co-op are purchasing. It's always surprised me how little buying groups and purchasing co-ops know about the spending patterns of their members. Most groups that I work with don't understand at a real-time basis what their members are buying at either the category or the item level. Amongst other things, this means that groups don't know what rebates they are owed from their vendors or what rebates they themselves owe to their members at any specific time in the calendar year. This lack of knowledge means that groups are effectively running blind as they make their business decisions throughout the year. My experience has been that groups that capture category and item data have a very distinct advantage over other co-ops. They typically pay out higher rebates to their members. Their negotiations with their vendor partners go smoother. They provide more creative services to their members. Member turnover is smaller. And as a whole, the group is much more resistant to the impact of any corporate competition they have in their space. So the challenge, of course, is how do you collect this purchasing data that you need without becoming a slave to the collection process? So generally, groups that do realize the importance of collecting this data, they try to capture it using a combination of 3 different methods. Most commonly, they rely upon after-the-fact vendor reporting. They simply ask their vendors to provide them with quarterly reports of what their members have purchased. Now, these reports they're often a challenge for vendors to put together. Typically at a vendor location, the reporting systems are geared towards individual businesses or corporate chains. They're not accustomed to dealing with associations of individual businesses that have formed themselves into either a purchasing co-op or a buying group. Now, because of that, they usually, when they're putting together these reports, they usually have to merge several reports by hand into a single spreadsheet. And because this is a manual process, and because the person that's putting the report together isn't very motivated to spend a lot of time to make sure that the report is complete, typically these quarterly vendor reports are inaccurate. And they can be up to anywhere from 5% to 20% under-reporting the total spend of membership within a co-op. The other problem with these vendor-driven reports is they arrive late. They arrive well after the fact when that information in those reports could have actually been useful to the co-op. Co-ops also rely on member reporting. They actually ask their members to self-report and provide them quarterly reports showing what they themselves have purchased. And this approach suffers from the same shortcomings as vendor reporting, missing information, and it arrives too late to really have any value. And then the third approach is manual keying. Some co-ops I've worked with actually try to key in copies of all of the invoices at a detail level in order to get to that data into their system. And it's always a labor-intensive nightmare. So at LBMX, what we have found is the very best approach to capture line level and category information is to capture the invoice data automatically within an EDI process. An EDI is the electronic data interchange of documents within the supply chain, typically invoices, purchase orders, and other supplementary information. So interestingly, this co-op that I started working with, they had previously tried adopting EDI 2 years before I started talking with them. They were working with another company, and the project was one of those technology projects that ultimately failed. So why did it fail? They didn't have a clear reason or motivation for moving to EDI. I mean, it is a lot of work to transition into an EDI environment. And they did this at the time simply because one of their board members said, don't we need to go paperless? Isn't everyone going paperless? They didn't tie it to a clear strategic benefit. And because of that, they did lack incentive. It always got pushed back into the mix of other day-to-day things that they were working on. And at the end of their project, when they finally put the last nail in the coffin, they had only managed to move 2 suppliers onto EDI. So they had spent a lot of money, and they really had nothing to show for it. So one of the biggest takeaways that I've got for you today is when you think about EDI, EDI is the starting point. It's not the end goal. EDI is a tool, and it's a means to the end, because with proper software tooling behind it, EDI allows any purchasing cooperative, whether it's a central bill group or a direct bill group, to capture member purchase information and bring it into a database. And once you have that information in your database, with the proper software tools, you can start to take advantage of the power contained in that data. As an aside, quick aside, I'll just point out that Getting your supply chain to adopt EDI has a very unique set of challenges for purchasing cooperatives that don't exist in traditional corporate environments. If you want to talk further about that, please contact me after the webinar. I recommend that when you have a conversation with any EDI provider, that you make sure that they understand the unique challenges that a purchasing cooperative faces as opposed to a quote-unquote kind of normal EDI rollout. There is a bit of special expertise there. So here's what we did in year one. The very first thing that we did, even before we had their suppliers on board with EDI, is we ranked their suppliers by volume. Then we approached the highest ranking suppliers, and we determined which one of them could already send their invoices electronically. Then LBMX handled the onboarding process with these EDI-ready suppliers. I won't go into the nitty-gritty details there. And we started to receive invoices electronically at the purchasing co-op level, and then forward those invoices out to the membership in an LBMX maintained web portal, which we call our document center. And we continued to work through that list in priority order from the biggest suppliers down. And within 6 months, we had 60% of their members' invoices by total volume being transmitted electronically. The co-op then went to the remaining suppliers on their list, and they gave them notice that within 24 months, everyone needed to commit to either sending their invoices through EDI or keying their invoices into a web tool managed by us, LBMX, or else pay a service charge to help cover the cost of the co-op keying them in manually. So within year one, I mean, typically you don't start to see the full advantage of this data-driven approach until you have a full year's worth of data for each supplier. However, during the first year, you do start to see some returns right away, mainly by focusing on tracking your existing rebate programs. It's really the biggest bang for your buck. So once you're able to capture invoice data real time, you're no longer dependent on those quarterly reports from your suppliers in order to track your rebates. So that means you can track your members' progress real time. You can focus on hitting any plateaus and growth incentive rebates. You know to the penny what your rebate payout should be even before your suppliers send you a report. And that also means that you can catch any errors with supplier reports right away. And that's why we always focus on capturing invoice data as opposed to other sources of data such as purchase orders. Invoice data has the key to giving you immediate value out of this process. So what happened? Within the first 12 months, things did start to turn around. Rebate revenue increased both for the co-op itself and for the members. The co-op spent less time processing and mailing invoices, so a planned hire was canceled, and they were actually able to repurpose some other staff members. I am very happy to say that they didn't choose to fire anyone or downsize. What they did is they took their existing staff and the people that were no longer required to handle invoice processing, they repurposed them so that they could focus on more exciting and value-add initiatives for their membership. The suppliers were happy after the first year because they didn't have to do manual reporting every quarter. Their processes were simplified, and it was a lot easier to deal with the co-op, and they were able to actually deal with them in so-called normal channels that they're used to dealing with other corporations. The membership was happy. They liked receiving standardized invoices and rebate statements within their document center. And they like to be able to look back and find old invoices in their document center as well. They also got used to the higher rebates and some of the operational efficiencies. And all of this meant that it was harder and harder for them to try to leave the co-op. So continuing on this strategy into the second year, now the group had accurate information about what their members were buying and from whom. And it's at this point that the co-op started to see the real power of using this approach. So using the invoice data in the LBMX software, they were able to analyze the performance of each and every member within the co-op and every supplier that they dealt with. They instituted a scorecard approach, which is one of the best practices recommended by the NCBA. They analyzed which of their members seemed to be purchasing less from the group, and they worked with those members to get more of the purchases flowing through the group itself. They started basing their preferred vendor programs on hard data. By looking at the numbers within each category, they were able to leverage their members' purchasing power by focusing more on one or two preferred vendors within the category, which provided a dramatic advantage not just for their membership, but for their supplier partners as well. So another quick aside here, how do you actually set up a preferred vendor program using this real-time data that you're capturing through EDI? And how do you make those programs more effective? So assuming you have access to line item invoice data through your LBMX software or whatever software platform you're using, what you need to do is put together the following information. So you need to start off by simply listing the top 10 products within any given category. Then look at what your total purchase value within your co-op for those top 10 items. List out the vendors who actually sell those items within the category. And then you can begin to analyze the variation of item cost between vendor and vendor. You can look at the variation of an item cost from member to member, especially within the same vendor. You can look at regional differences. You can analyze how fragmented the purchasing is amongst members and amongst vendors. And then you can begin to see which of the vendors you work with have the most to gain or lose from each category program. And then obviously calculate out the total product purchases from all of your members within that category. And I mean, you can see that it's hard to put together this kind of information if you're relying solely on your vendors for reporting. Typically, groups that I work with, before they use our software, they survey their membership to try and find out all of this information. They piece it together, and they make the assumption that the spending habits of a small subset of their members is reflective of the entire group. And unfortunately, this isn't always the case. And this is where having a source of accurate, real-time data along with the tools to analyze that data really makes a difference. Because with the right data and the right tools, you can put together all of this information within a few hours without having to ask your vendors or your members to do any work on your behalf. And you can actually evaluate a much larger set of items than what I refer to as your top 10. You can do a very exhaustive analysis of the entire category. So that was a quick aside. What else did we do year 2? In addition to the preferred vendor programs, or part of that, we had much stronger vendor negotiations. So the co-op was able to share the information that they had about their members' purchases back to their vendor partners, and they were able to actually show them the number of members that were committed to buying from them, as well as the estimated dollar volume of those committed purchases. With accurate historical purchase data, they were able to show the projected increase in sales that the supplier would enjoy. And with that clear expectation of sales, they were able to negotiate much more favorable unit costs and rebate programs within each category. They also organized focused buying programs or event buys at very specific points in their year to earn additional rebate revenue on key items. They provided much better reporting back to their own board of directors. They started a group-sponsored member EDI initiative so that invoices could flow directly into their member ERP systems. And that kind of twining of operational systems made it, again, even harder for members to even think about leaving the co-op. And they launched several other member programs that they could never get around to doing before because they didn't have the time. So going into year 3, I'm going to wrap up with year 3. They started to use the line level invoice data that LBMX provided them in the following ways. They continued to tighten their list of preferred vendors. They renegotiated their rebates at the category level. They expanded that focused buy program. They actually asked, this was interesting, they asked 2 of their weakest and least supportive members to leave the co-op. And they began looking at other ways that they could turn their cooperative, not just from a buying group, but into more of a community. So they expanded their web portal. They offered online ordering catalogs through LBMX. They delivered price lists out. They offered a much easier mechanism for communicating with each other. So, in other words, after you have addressed kind of that primary strategic value provided by the purchasing co-op, again, increased member margins through better pricing, better rebates. After you have that primary goal addressed, the group found that they had the time, the resources, and now the revenue from increased rebates to invest in additional technology that could then be used to address those secondary objectives. And that allowed them to continue to add unique value to their membership. So I've got one more tangent here. I mentioned on the last slide about category level rebates. So I just want to clarify that because, again, this is one of the big pieces that can come out of capturing line level invoice data. So most rebate programs are typically a very simple percentage of the total purchase of products that are eligible for a rebate. For example, a vendor may pay 2% of the total purchases made during a year back to the buying group or co-op. So in addition to this simple percentage, most rebate programs include some form of additional incentive for additional spending. Targets or plateaus are set up at several levels, and every time a purchase target is reached, the rebate percentage increases. That's the typical approach, so what's wrong with it? Basically, it treats all product lines offered by any specific vendor equally. So you have to remember that rebates are not just an incentive to sell more, they're an incentive to sell more of certain products. They're designed so that your members will spend money with a supplier where that supplier wants to spend them. Because every vendor has products that they make more money on than others, and every vendor has products that they make no money on or even lose money on. And if a vendor can offer a higher rebate percentage on the items that they want to sell and a lower rebate percentage on items that they don't make them any money on, they would absolutely do that. But why don't they? Well, it goes back to that administrative hassle of managing rebate programs for a purchasing co-op. I mean, it's often hard enough for a vendor to report on all of the invoices sent to members of a co-op in order to figure out the total purchases, let alone drilling into those invoices to determine how much was spent on specific products or categories of products. Their systems aren't designed that way, and quite often their rebate management software tools aren't that good. However, if you can demonstrate to your vendor partners that you have quick access to accurate, real-time data at the invoice level, you can begin to negotiate different rebate programs for different categories of products. And by negotiating at the category level, the net result is always an increase in rebate payouts to your membership. Right. So I want to move into kind of the third year results. Again, the positive trends increased into year 3. The dollar purchases that were made through the purchasing co-op, they increased. The rebate dollars earned by the group and by its membership continued to increase. They actually did a kind of ad hoc survey of their membership, and they found that members' average net margin increased by 3.5% within the 2 years. They started to have members join the co-op. They had some members come back who had left, and they had some new members join. They were able to demonstrate clear value to their membership. They were able to maximize the revenue generated both by the co-op itself and paid out to their members. They put new systems in place so they could operate more efficiently, so that again they could start to deal with this growth without having to add staff members. And they increased what we like to call the stickiness of the co-op through value adds and by entwining members' operations with the co-op's operations, so that it becomes more and more difficult for a member to leave. So to wrap things up, this technology strategy that I just described, it's proven successful time and time again amongst our customers, and it's proven successful regardless of the size of the purchasing co-op, regardless of the geographic location of the co-op, and regardless of what sector the co-op operates in. And it works for both a central bill buying model or a direct bill buying model. So given the wide range of technology choices, it can be very difficult for a co-op to choose which technologies to focus on and which ones to adopt. By focusing on what is truly important to your group will help you make the right decision. So again, identify the most important strategic goal and the mission for your co-op, and make sure that whatever technology strategy you use directly supports and advances those goals. Now, I mean, every group I've worked with is very overworked, very understaffed, and very ambitious in what they want to achieve. It can be very tempting to think that simply increasing operational efficiency is actually a strategic goal. Adopting technology that frees up staff time but doesn't add additional value to your membership, it's a short-term solution at best. The truth is that most operational software, it tends to make jobs simpler, but it doesn't make them any less time-consuming. People's administrative tasks, unfortunately, tend to expand to fill the time available in the workday, regardless of any improvements that the software tool provides. And even worse, by focusing on operational efficiency, in the long term, your purchasing co-op becomes nothing more than an administrative body. It doesn't add the value you need to add to your membership. And even worse, it doesn't allow you to distinguish your co-op from other competing co-ops within your sector, and it makes it very easy for your members to leave your group and go over to another group. So on the other hand, if you're very clear about the larger goal of your group, you can use your technology to help you achieve that goal. Operational efficiency becomes important just to make sure that the new technology you adopt doesn't become bogged down, but your focus should always be on making sure that your cooperative is moving forward, adding value to your membership, and helping your membership be more profitable and more prosperous. So to wrap things up, if you have questions about adopting a technology strategy, what your strategy should be, or you want help in understanding how you can actually use software tools to achieve that technology strategy, feel free to reach out to me. My contact information is at the bottom of this screen here, or you can check out our website at lbmx.com. And on that note, I will pass things back to Brian to see if there's any questions.
Great, thank you, Steve. Can you still hear me good?
Yes.
Wonderful. Okay, I adjusted my microphone, so I was hoping everybody could hear me better. We do have a couple questions. Thank you again for all this great information. Again, for those that are listening, if you want to type in your questions on the question box, we do have a good amount of time for Steve to dive into some of these. So, Steve, the first question that we received here is asking, how can you incentivize direct billing suppliers to use the web portal EDI when they are invoicing direct to members?
Absolutely. So when we look at rolling out EDI within a direct bill group, our first and foremost initiative is to get vendors to send traditional EDI, which often is the case. Most of them do. If they cannot send traditional EDI, we talk to them as far as what type of file can your existing system export. Can you actually export invoices into a comma-separated file, an Excel spreadsheet, a flat text file? What can you guys do? And then we will work with them to translate that into EDI data. Kind of our third choice, and least preferred out of the three, is to ask the vendor to go to a web portal and key in invoices. Obviously, that's a pain for them because they're double keying it. So to address the question of how do you incentivize vendors to do that, the groups that I've worked with, and it's often a very painful decision for them, but it works once they do it, is to go back to them as part of their negotiations each year and make it clear if they are not able to provide an electronic file that they will either need to key the invoice in directly themselves or pay an additional service fee. And that service fee covers the cost of the co-op keying in those invoices themselves. So it's a trade-off. I mean, you do want that information electronically. That's your biggest goal. And if you have to key it in yourself and the cost of doing that is covered, so be it. And if a supplier wants to avoid that cost, they'll key it in themselves. Now, typically, it's a very small percentage, though, of suppliers that can't send or maybe unwilling to send an electronic file with this information.
Great. Thank you, Steve. So we do have, looks like 4 more questions. The first one that we have, can you explain the mapping process to capture item data across multiple vendors?
Sure. So I can talk about LBMX's process. There's obviously other ways out there. So when you receive an invoice in an EDI format or other electronic format, obviously we have tools in place that strip out the line level product data from within that invoice. So we capture into our databases every line on the invoice, product number, UPC code, pricing information, product descriptions. There's a host of information that suppliers will send in that EDI file. We have translation software that maps all of that into appropriate database fields. That's I don't think I want to describe that in detail because you will fall asleep, but we have a team of programmers that make that incredibly efficient and accurate. And then once that data is within your database, obviously we capture it in a way that we can filter by specific suppliers, by specific members. We can also look for similar or same products spread out between suppliers so that there's a host of reporting options that you can do to really get a good insight into what your members are buying, from who, and as well as who else could they have bought it from. That answer the question, Brian, do you think?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. If the person that asked that question, if you do have a follow-up, just you can type it in the box there. We'd be happy to get back to that. The next question we have is, what kind of interface do you require to operate LBMX with current ERP? I think you may have touched on that a little bit in terms of what you're able to do, but if you have anything else
Sure.
to add there.
Yeah. We can integrate our software systems in a few different ways. I'll just describe the most common way. The most common way is that all of the electronic invoices from the vendor community flow into LBMX created software that is run at your location. We have an invoice management tool, and the beauty of that tool is it automatically checks every single invoice that comes in so that you don't have to, and it checks based on rules in a couple different categories. Obviously it checks the basics for error checking and syntax just to make sure it's readable. But the real power of it comes in is you can put in any number of business rules. So you can have all of your invoices automatically checked to make sure that they're coming in for members that exist within your co-op. You can have them check against the credit limit of certain members or whether a member is on credit hold. You can make sure that the terms agreement, for example, that the terms on every invoice matches your vendor buying agreement that you made every year, and flag any invoice that stands out. So this data checker process basically cleanses your invoice data before it gets into your ERP system, and then we provide export hooks out into ERP systems so that after an invoice goes through our software, it's then sent into your accounting software. And the nice thing is that it's clean at that point, so you don't have to do a lot of adjustments or things like that. If an invoice is going to get rejected, it gets rejected before it ever enters your accounting software system. And then from there, you can either handle it within your existing processes, or we do have tools to also handle generation of accounts payable statements, handling payments, getting collections from your members, things like that.
Great, and I think that you actually kind of answered this next question too. Their specific question is, do you offer other tools such as WMS ERP to complete the LBMX tool proposed during today's presentation?
We offer a very wide range of tools, actually, and I just kind of touched on the tip of the iceberg here. My intention, in all honesty, was never to turn this into a sales demo. So kind of the range of our tools, which have been created specifically for purchasing cooperatives, buying groups, their membership, and we have tools for suppliers as well. We focus on building those tools out. We emphasize the strategy that I just described first and foremost. But beyond that, we have a very rich and extensive set of tools around rebate management and managing the entire rebate process from reconciliation all the way out to payouts. We have tools to facilitate the ordering process for your membership, whether it's an online catalog, or whether it's an EDI-driven collection of purchase orders. We have tools to manage the product pool offerings within a purchasing cooperative. We have tools to facilitate communications and transmit information out. We've got I mentioned our secure web portal, our document center, that really becomes a focus to either complement your existing web portal or in many cases replace it. So there's quite a large set of offerings there.
Great. That's awesome. And I think The follow-up to that was the gentleman was asking, you then need to categorize each product the vendor sells to be able to extract the information by category. And does it also mean that you need to keep updated product information data? Is there a cost on the size of the database used?
There's no additional costing on the size of the database, the number of products that you have within it. But you are absolutely correct that to get the most value out of the system, you do go through a process of categorizing products from vendors into rebate categories, which is actually far more easy than it sounds. And once you have that categorization in place, every time an invoice comes in, it's automatically updating the records related to those rebate categories for that supplier. So you don't have to worry about it. You can just run your reports at the end of the day.
Great. So this person is asking, I have a 45 company co-op with 11 vendors. I'm interested in a program such as this. Perhaps it's an offline discussion. Could you give me any idea of the initial expense in purchasing into this program?
Unfortunately, I can't. I have the luxury of not being on the sales team, so I don't often concern myself with the nitty-gritty. I just get to have fun and focus on how I can help people out.
So what we'll do, Steve, is we can, we can connect you with this person offline. That would be probably the best course of action. We're happy to do that for you. Let's see. The next question was a database question. Could you just tell me what type of database your programmers are using? I'm thinking about further uses with the data. Are you able to share?
Sure. Yeah. So we've got a couple layers in here. So the layer that you would see at the co-op level, we run a Microsoft SQL Server database separate for each co-op. We have a transactional format for that data, which is all designed on getting invoices, purchase orders, purchase order acknowledgments, price lists, all of that wonderful EDI data. The transactional database is focused on speed and accuracy. We then move that data out into a data warehouse format, again within a Microsoft SQL Server system, so that it becomes far more effective to report on that data, right? And obviously, on our corporate side, within our head office here, we use a bunch of other databases. We have a lot of electronic documents flowing through our system, which requires a bit more powerful databases on our side.
Great. So it looks like we have one more question, unless anyone else has anything. The person is asking, we operate a core range of products, which is a subset of the total range. How do we tag these products to ID core items? The core range products may be available from multiple vendors.
So how do you identify products that are available from multiple vendors? That
would be question? A subset. Yeah, that would be a subset of the total, is how I'm interpreting that.
Yeah. So linking products that are provided from multiple suppliers or vendors, I won't kid you, it's a bit of a challenge. There are some unique identifiers that make it a little bit easier. If you can capture manufacturer number, that tends to be common across vendors. If the product has a UPC code, that tends to be common across vendors, or you can manually link common items together. And by doing that, that again allows you to run comparative reports so that you can see not only what did I purchase from a specific vendor, but what would happen if I purchased, instead of across 5 different vendors, if I just purchased from one? What's the big difference there? So it is a manual process in many cases if you can't get that data or it's not relevant to those products. And typically, again, you want to focus on the most important products that have the biggest purchase so that you can get the biggest bang up from your buck on that.
Great. And true to form, there is one more question. Honestly, this is why I love the purchasing co-ops. They're so engaged and so curious about everything that's going on. This is awesome. Steve, last question here, unless there's others before we go. Can you set up a rebate whereby you reward individual members reaching specific steps? So it sounds kind of like a reward program for rebates.
Yeah, so a individualized plateau rebate in kind of our jargon. I've seen this done. So my understanding of the question, just to make sure I'm clear, is let's say you have 100 members within your co-op. The specific buying targets for each of those members is unique and set typically based on past performance. So if a specific member increases their purchases by X%, they will get increased rebates. So we currently handle that within our rebate module, and the exciting thing is for us, I haven't told a lot of people yet, but we're actually making additional enhancements to that piece next year to make it even more streamlined so that you can see more within a single glance all of your membership's individual targets and be able to deal with that more efficiently, because that kind of approach is becoming more and more common. So to repeat, kind of the short answer right now is yes, we do that, and next year is going to be even better.
Fantastic. That's great, Steve. Looking to see, okay, that looks like that was the last one. So I want to thank you, the attendees, for being so engaged today. Like I said, the purchasing group is a group that's always thinking and looking how to improve and how to compete with some of their big box stores, and obviously some of the services and thoughts and techniques that Steve has been talking about today is a great way to do that. So again, thank you to Steve for preparing this session. And again, I want to let everybody know that is on the line that this webinar has been recorded and that you will receive the link to the recording in a few days. If you're looking for more information about purchasing co-ops, visit the ncba.coop site, and you can also website, and you can plan to join us next fall in Miami, September 19th through the 21st for our National Purchasing Cooperatives Conference. Generally, that conference is focused on best practices and high-level strategies, and as a complement to that, I also recommend that you join LBMX for their Accelerate conference, June 8th through the 10th in Chicago. That conference supports LBMX customers and interested parties, and they dive more into specific issues in kind of a TED Talks type format. So it's a very interesting conference and worth your time as well. And Steve, I know I didn't mention it during your bio. You recently wrote a book, is that correct?
I dabbled into the ebook realm, which kind of takes this specific topic and expands it greatly. So
okay. What's the name of that book?
You can get it on Amazon.
What's the name of the book?
It is Technology Strategies for Buying Groups.
Awesome, cool. So we asked everybody on the line here to give that a look. Again, if you have any questions about NCBA, about membership, please contact me. Again, my name is Brian Munson. My email is bmunson, M-U-N-S-O-N, @ncba.coop. You can, of course, find that on the website. And if you would like to stay in the loop about purchasing co-op news or just anything related to the cooperative sector, definitely subscribe to our e-newsletter, the Cooperative Business Journal. You can find that easily on our website as well. It's been my pleasure to moderate today's webinar. Thank you again, Steve, for your time, and the audience for your attention and engagement. Thank you again to everybody, and have a great day. We're going to end the webinar now. Talk soon.